Hello, everybody, and welcome to Documentation Not Included. It's Thursday, 7 p.m. BST, and it's hot. And we're live at twitch.tv/DNIStream. It's time for episode, and we're kind of going back here, 1.1. Python, the second language. I'm Josie Howarth, and today I am joined by one of the coolest individuals on the planet, Chris Seabach, and our guest, Owain Williams.
Thank you very much, Josie, and of course, you're nearly as awesome, Josie. Nearly. And yes, I modified what you wrote. I got you because I read the script before you did this week. You're catching up with me at least, anyway. One week. As always, a big thank you to everybody in chat. Thank you very much for listening, and please do get involved with the show. If you say something relevant, funny, or non-relevant, or not funny, we might read it out. So, if you're lucky, get involved, and we'll go from there. It's time to meet our guest, Owain Williams. Why don't you take a moment, introduce yourself, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Cool, sure, thanks. Thanks for having me, first of all. I'm Owain, I'm based in Edinburgh, here in Scotland, and I work for a small digital agency called Lewis as a Umbraco developer. Been working with Umbraco for about 2.5 years. I'm MVP, Umbraco, ambassador for GitKraken, and just a social media kind of person. I'm on social media and things. So
I already have a few things here. One, Umbraco or Umbraco?
I say Umbraco.
See, I hear lots of people say Umbraco, but I've always said Umbraco. But I used to call Doctor Who Cybermen Cybermen, so I'm useless with that. I've forgotten the other one already, but it doesn't matter. Go on, Josie.
Ambassador. Yay!
Oh yes, ambassador. So you're a dirty Git UI user.
I am.
Oh, I mean, I've no problem with Git UIs really, but I'm a command line freak. So.
Hey.
It's really what we were discussing. I started my computing career as MS DOS, but I've just got used to having a nice GUI in front of me, and it looks pretty. And yeah, I'm lazy.
We're not talking about that this show. We'll have a GUI show at some point.
We'll definitely have to get into that at some point, especially considering we're both ambassadors. So, icebreaker time. This is where we do a quick icebreaker question to get to know each other better and to basically peel back our skin of our brains and skulls and let you, I don't know, stick your fingers in and squidgy it. He said GUI, so my brain is focused on the word GUI.
It's me and my pronunciations. GUI, G-U-I.
There was a debate on Reddit about how to pronounce GUI, and I'm like, I'm not going in there. Yeah. But anyway, so here's our icebreaker question. What was your favorite piece of clothing when you were a child?
I immediately know what my least favorite piece of clothing was, but I'm going to guest's privilege. Owen can go first.
On the spot. I don't know. Do welly boots count as clothing?
Yes, yep. Yes, they do.
Yeah, I used to just walk around in my welly boots.
Do they have a design or a color?
Nope. I think they were yellow. I grew up in the Isle of Tiree on the west coast, so it's very kind of fisherman orientated. So yellow wellies. So they were my thing.
On the west coast, did you say?
Yeah.
I used to go to Stranraer for holiday quite a lot. I mean, probably not close to. I don't know where the Isle of Tiree is actually, but is it anywhere near that?
Kind of further west. So we're in the Inner Hebrides.
Right.
So a tiny little island on the west coast. But anyway, yeah.
Favorite piece of clothing as a child. I had a hat that it's a really bad reason for liking this hat, but it's the only piece of clothing that I have any kind of memory of as a child. I used a hat to cover up some coins, like some plastic coins that I had lifted, let's say, from school. The pound coins and the 50p's and things that you used to get to practice counting. I got into a lot of trouble when my mum found out about that, and I haven't touched anything since. But it was a hat and it was a flat cap. It was my favourite piece of clothing for a long time.
See, mine is. Oh gosh, this reveals so much about me. When I was younger, do you remember the footy pajamas that you had that you could wear? They were basically one suit kind of pajama type thingies. You put your feet into them, and then
Onesie.
they go over your they're onesies,
Yeah.
that kind of a thing. I had this thing where I would put one on, and then I would demand another one be put onto my arm, so I had a cape.
Okay.
So I would run around basically with a cape. So when I was younger, I was already a superhero in my brain. Hashtag it was not a dress. Anyway. But yes, that was my favorite. I don't know why. I don't remember much, but there are so many pictures of me with this. And this was around the time when I started taking apart stereo systems because I wanted to find the tiny people. I was really pissed when I couldn't find the tiny people in the stereo systems. But yeah. And Venus says socks. They're still her favorite piece of clothing. Wow.
Yeah, I still can't think of anything. I remember lots of different fabric. I had some curtains that I really liked as a kid. That I've still got them. There were Star Wars curtains, and
that's allowed.
Yeah, probably worth a mint now, actually. But apart from the fact I cut them with a pair of scissors when I was a child, I was a little bastard. And
then this has changed.
Well, okay, now I'm a big bastard.
My script. I will not forgive you for changing. Yeah.
So now on to this week's subject, Python, the second language. Before we dig into why Owain is learning this second language, or at least another language on top of the most perfect language in the world, C#, let's define what a programming language is for those listeners who may not know the difference between a scripting language or a higher level language. Where do we start with that, I suppose? What is the definition of a programming language? Now,
you have one, Owen, because I've got one.
To be honest, I hadn't really thought about it, but I suppose for me it would be probably something that I have to compile, if that makes sense. So that's where I would kind of go. That's where my kind of what is the language? If I have to compile it, then I would call it as a language rather than a script.
So you wouldn't call a scripting language a programming language. You'd call that a scripting language specifically. You wouldn't. I mean, to me, they're one and the same because we can write script. I could write scripts in C#. They're not compiled.
True.
PowerShell, for example, allows you to use C# scripts. They don't get compiled. They actually run in the what's it called? Forgotten the name of it, but whatever PowerShell uses to interpret the C# side of things, that doesn't. That's still the same programming language. You write it in the same way.
Yeah. No, that's a good point. Yeah.
So I mean, but
here's where I jump in. I can see the compiling thing, and then of course you start looking at things like Sass or less, and you have to compile your CSS script and
transpile.
To me, exactly. To me, it's anything that you write that allows you to manipulate or modify hardware in some way, shape, or form. And if you write an application, you're still manipulating hardware. You're just manipulating the RAM, you're manipulating the CPU, you're using the video card to draw graphics, or however you want to look at it. It's not just interacting, it's you're commanding a system to do something. That's the way that to me, it's not obfuscation. It's the more and more we pull away from
abstraction.
Abstraction. The word of the series.
But ACL is a programming language, and ACL is machine language. But I think what we're talking about here is something that has instructions, that instructs the computer to do something specifically, isn't it? And
algorithms.
Everything on a computer basically instructs it to do something. So I think there's a distinction in terms of a language. Anyway, there's a distinction between a compiled language and a transpiled language, or even transpiles. We're still compiling it in a way. It's just compiling it into another language, like TypeScript into JavaScript. But I think there are actually TypeScript compilers as well out there.
So this is where things start getting really weird. This is why I think it's more. Having discussed this now, it's more the intent. Because if you look at people who use Lua to write mods for games or things like that, in a way they're doing a programming thing in Lua, although Lua isn't necessarily seen as programming language. It's more like a scripting thing to me. it's intent. It's you're writing something with the intent to control the output in some way, shape, or form.
A lot of the time, we don't care what goes on in the background, especially as higher level programmers. I mean, I don't write machine language. I don't understand binary instructions, and I never need to. The stuff that I do, I write structured code, usually type safe, strongly typed structured code. Maybe not in JavaScript, but you know it's and that is, it just tells something to do something, you know, and whether it's a browser, you know, or it's a CPU. I mean, even the browser down the line is telling the CPU to do something, but it's still, to me, a language is a language. It doesn't really matter. And as much as I've poked Owain for the last few days on Twitter about C# being better than everything else, I don't actually believe that. You know, it is just one way. It's one method, one way for us to get a result. And I know C# inside and out, so it's my preferred language. But I know lots of satellite languages.
Yeah, and just to put the nail in the coffin of what definition is for a programming language, I'm just going to quote Wikipedia.
No.
Wikipedia says, I love this, a programming language is a formal language that specifies a set of instructions that can be used to produce various kinds of output. Programming languages generally consist of instructions for a computer. Programming languages can also be used to create programs that implement specific algorithms. So
We said all the
they're
keywords.
very loosely. Yes. if we were playing Jeopardy or something like that, you know, we might win the double Jeopardy.
Who were in a job interview would have maybe got the job.
Maybe, quite possibly. But yes.
So what? Why? So, I want to know then. Why have you chosen to pick up Python over other languages? Is there a specific project that you started working on, or is it something you're doing in your spare time?
This is absolutely my spare time. Basically, I've got multiple Raspberry Pis, the wee computers, kind of dotted around my house. And ever since I bought the first one, it has on the drop-down menu, it has Python. Okay. So I was basically, that's it. It's kind of like that drew my attention to it. And I was like, well, if I could learn Python, then I can maybe do a bit more customization on my Raspberry Pi. So
that's interesting. I've got a few Raspberry Pis myself, and one's RetroPie, so I don't do anything with it apart from install games on it. And the other one, I was starting to write a home automation system on it, but I used Node. I decided to install Node and play around with it. I didn't even consider Python.
Yeah, I suppose I don't really have much front end knowledge. A lot of my work is C#, .NET. So I was kind of like, well, I'll go down a programming language kind of style, and I've seen a lot of talk on social media and websites about Python, how it's kind of found its feet now, and it's been around for a while, and there's versions coming out of it. It's not a language that's just gonna die.
No.
So I don't want to spend all my time learning a new language to find out actually 6 months down the line it's not getting used by anybody.
Oh, you mean like Angular frameworks? No. It's that whole flavor of the month kind of thing. And it's interesting you say that it's not going to die. Python's been around since the early 1900s. 1990s. Wow.
Jesus Christ. I've seen Python in the works for many years. It's not something that I've ever looked at. I can't even visualize how it sits together. Does it have semicolons? Has it got, what's the syntax like? I've got no idea, because it's not something that I've ever needed to learn.
Sure.
But I've needed to learn lots of languages. I just don't, that hasn't come up.
Yeah.
Well, what languages do you, what was your first programming language? Or language of any variety? Because
my first one was probably COBOL at university.
Not Fortran?
Not Fortran.
My first was BASIC on the Commodore 64, but I didn't really know what I was doing. I was just copying out of magazines, and But my first official language was VB Script.
Okay.
So that wasn't compiled either.
Yeah, well, man, it's like I've done Fortran, I've done COBOL. I can't remember what order I got things in. Then came C++.
We got taught Pascal.
What's funny is I went from C++ to C#. And at the time, there was a big sort of hoo-ha about the fact that C# had issues with pointers and something or other. It was a long time ago. And like, because there was a huge group of us that were doing this sort of transition into C#. And I just remember, like, the teacher was like, I really don't want to teach you this, but I have to, so you guys all understand what's going on. There's this problem, and it's this thing. And I'm just in there going, okay. That's like what I remember of my introduction to C#. But yeah. So for you, I hear a seagull.
It's all going on outside. I'm sorry, I really can't close my windows today. It's so hot in this room. It's not happening.
That's okay. If you hear noise or music in the background, we have an ice cream truck that keeps blowing past, etc. But yes, so for you just were interested in learning Python because it was a language that, in your opinion, is going to be around. You're not wasting your time or effort.
Yeah, but also I've got ideas of what I want to do with my Raspberry Pi. So it kind of just made sense of, well, if I learn Python, then I can maybe learn a bit more about, just improve my programming skills, I guess. And hopefully I'll have a project to learn from. Because there's times I've tried to learn languages just by reading books. And unless you've got a project to actually push you forward and keep your motivation going, then you're just going to give up, which I have done.
It's a pretty common theme on this show, and I think with every programmer on the planet, that if you need to learn something or you want to learn something, do a project. I learned Angular through a number of different projects. I learned C# through a specific project back in the day. I was a VB programmer before then. Sorry. But
it's your fault.
Yeah.
It's your fault. So Tepe in chat says that they started with Java, but never really got far. Then started PLC programming and structured text, and now he's learning C, C++ for embedded programming, and he's poking Python as well.
Cool.
So we've all made the transition between languages at least once in our life. I mean, you don't start with one. In our world, you discover something and you have to go exploring. What was the biggest thing that shocked you when transitioning from C# to Python?
I'd say I'm still very much in the transition. So basically, I've
so far, what is the thing that has stood out
yeah.
to you that just made you go mind blown?
So far, it's really simple. It's their if statements.
Okay.
So basically, in C#, do your if statement and you open up your curly brackets. And you put everything in there. It's nice. It looks nice. It just looks nice. With Python, it's to make it an if statement, you put 4 spaces. So four space bars is your if statement.
Oh no, we're getting into Lisp territory here.
So luckily, Visual Studio Code basically takes the new line for you and indents it and everything, and so you don't have to constantly think space. But yeah, that was initially, I was just like, I don't understand this. Reading somebody else's code, I was like, what is this thing? I mean, how does this work? But yeah, it's the 4 spaces.
That is, I wasn't aware of that. I can't even visualize it, so it's difficult for me. I should really have done a little bit of research and at least had a look at some Hello World, examples, and just to get my head around it. What about things like syntax then? Apart from just the spaces, what other differences are there between C# and?
There's no need to basically have any functions. You can literally just open up a console and type print hello world with a couple of brackets and things, but basically that will just run. You don't have to call a method. It just does it. You don't have to declare your variables. So if you want to have it as a decimal or a float or anything like that, you don't have to declare them. It just works it out. So if your numbers, for example, if you've got a decimal of 10, it just knows that's a decimal. If you want to make it a float, you just put it 10.1 and it just accepts it.
So what do you do about doubles and the differences between doubles and decimals?
Again, I'm still going through that, but there was a difference. But again, you don't need to tell it. So you don't have to declare it.
Duck typed then in that case. Is that duck typing or is that loose typing?
For some reason, I thought you said something else.
What?
I thought you said duct taping. I'm like,
Yes,
Duct
it's
taping a language? We're duct taping a language.
No.
Yeah,
Duct
no.
tape. So yeah, it sounds like it's a bit looser, but you said you don't have to declare methods and functions. Can you though? Can you still create classes?
Yeah.
Is it still a object-oriented language?
Yeah. As far as basically, I'm kind of following this online course just now, so I've only been going that for about 3 weeks, kind of part-time-ish. But yeah, you can make it object-oriented, and there's basically the further into this course I'm going, they are kind of saying yes, you can make it object-oriented, and they highly recommend that you do, because otherwise it just gets into a horrible mess.
That just makes me smile in ways that I really, really shouldn't, considering. So the language itself, have you found yourself comparing it to C#? I mean, obviously we do, but have you found yourself going, oh, if only C# had this, or man, if only Python had this?
I think it's still too early for me to kind of say I'm missing this or I wish it could do that. But I definitely am comparing it. I think you just have to. It's just you're starting to type something, you go, oh no, that's C#, and then you kind of undo what you're doing. But yeah, it's nice enough for me to actually go, actually this is pretty much the same in C#, and the syntax isn't hugely different. So it's close enough for me to think, actually I'll be able to pick this up actually quite quickly, or quicker than I thought I might, if I compared it to another programming language. I'm trying to pick one off the top of my head, but I can't. But it's similar enough that I feel going from C# to Python is actually going to be not too difficult to do, which is reassuring.
Are you going to look at other languages after Python, do you think?
Yeah, that's the plan. It's like I was kind of basically the reason I got into or deciding that I had to learn another language was I was reading the book Pragmatic Programmer, easy for me to say, and they suggest that you learn a language every 12 months if you can. So I was like, actually, yeah, I've been sitting in my job for quite a few years now. I've been a developer for quite a while, and I only really do C#, and that's it. And I was like, really, my CV really needs to look a bit better than this, if nothing else.
Or CV-driven development. There we go.
That's the one.
So I've just been looking up some things on Python, just very briefly, and it looks like it supports floats, which is why you can type in everything. Float is the most accurate type of number you can use within most programming languages, I imagine. I'm not sure exactly how many decimal points you can have, but floats are the longest. And also the if statement thing, you can actually use tabs as well, not just spaces.
Yes, sorry. Yeah. But I think they were trying to say pick one or the other.
Yeah. Well, yeah. Obviously, I mean that's
consistency. Yeah. I mean, when you have, I can't even think. There's so many different languages where if you don't use the correct carriage return code, or like if you don't use, it gets really picky about how many spaces you have between that curly bracket or that function or that indent or that variable. Like, it can get crazy. It can get absolutely insane and frustrating and make me want to cry. But yes, so you got involved in Python because it was just there. You found a book that said you should probably learn a language thing. You're looking at CV-driven kind of development. What is your project? What is it you want your Python to do?
I've got a couple, but first one is basically in our office we've got a table tennis table, and my plan is to create a Python-driven scoreboard.
Okay.
So my plan is to expand the Raspberry Pi a wee bit as well and put buttons coming off it. So either end of the table tennis table there'll be a button, so you can score yourself, and it'll put the result onto a screen.
So you mean you haven't considered putting sensors all the way around the table tennis thing and detecting when it goes off and when it's off for a certain amount of time? This is where I go when
and see, this is funny because this shows the difference between Chris and I. Chris is like, the sensor thing. I'm like, why would you want to give the power to the person to control their own score? It should be in someone else's hands.
Like it.
So I'm looking at the security side of the implementation. I'm like, and are you going to get an Arduino involved, or are you just sticking with the Pi?
Just now, it'll just be the Pi, I think. Start slow and then build up. But yeah, so that's my first kind of project. And the other one was I've read a lot about automation with Python. So it can kind of do all the grafting for me. So we've got a client who builds. They've got a mortgage calculator, and we run hundreds of tests through this mortgage calculator. So my plan is to write a Python program that reads basically all the tests that they send us, which is usually an Excel spreadsheet, and get that to automate through our testing. Which I know we could do through unit testing and through C# and Visual Studio, but it's just another little side project that I quite fancy just using.
Why not?
Yeah.
Why not?
Can I throw something really cool out there for you?
Sure.
For Python, you can do some really cool things. Did you know that EVE Online is heavily driven by Python?
I did not.
I'm presuming it uses a scripting language. And I've just read that it's an interpreted language, Python, so it isn't actually compiled either. So it's like a PowerShell. It's like a JavaScript. It's not actually
scripting.
Yeah, so it is scripting. But it's interesting that we can also, it is object oriented in some respect.
Yeah, apparently Python. This is interesting. I've dabbled in the Python because no step on snake, boop the snoot. Anything that involves snakes, I get excited by. But I've just discovered apparently that Python's also used for the more complex graphic-intensive films by the Industrial Light and Magic people. So it's used in that as well.
Yeah,
it's actually quite a nice-looking language. It's not too different from what I'm used to in all of the languages I use. You know.
Yeah.
There's no crazy syntax or madness with, greater than, less than signs, bit shifting and all. Well, I'm sure you can do that, but
that's what I kind of liked is that when I was kind of so far going through the courses that I've been going through, nothing's jumped out and went, what? Well,
Yeah.
other than the spaces, there's nothing that's kind of really confused me, and it looks quite nice, or very nice.
That's one of the things for me. I mean, Chris, what was your transition from your first language to your second language?
Baptism of fire, and it was well, first language and second language actually wasn't too difficult because I went from VB Script. I was a classic ASP developer, and it was all self-taught, and it was hideous. I mean, I was bad at it. It was a bad language to actually write in as well, to be honest. And then I went to VB6, which at the time was out of date. I should have been moving to VB.net, but the company I started working for, that was the opportunity, and that's what I went to. And jumping into that and jumping into apartment threading, which is, again, one of the most hideous things on the planet, VB6 apartment threading. Jumping from that into a monolithic application that at least, I mean, it really was a scripted application. It wasn't very well structured. It was different. There was more things available to me, and there were more things available out of the box because classic ASP, you had to import third-party plugins, and you had to integrate it into your HTML scripts like PHP used to be. Again, I don't know, PHP has moved on since then, but PHP used to be you could insert bits into your HTML and it rendered as the page was interpreted. But now it's all about rendering things on the back end or even on the front end in single page applications. So it's very different. But yeah, I moved fairly easily into that. I just got thrown into it. But I also had to learn SQL, Transact SQL at the same time, which was a hefty jump. And that's what I got from that particular job, is that I learned everything I have ever needed to learn about SQL from then. I've never had a job as complicated because it was a lot of data. A lot, and Transact SQL is nothing like. I mean, it's a bit more like VB, I suppose, than anything else, but it's still its aims are different. Let's put it that way.
For me, it was the bouncing between object-oriented and non-object-oriented languages. Working, I mean, for me, I also did the whole learning your querying languages and stuff to manipulate data, not to have the data perform functions and things like that, but manipulating databases, because I love databases and how they're. I like query languages; they're pretty.
I much prefer structured languages these days. That's why I love C# so much, because I can separate everything, and everything has its own concern, which is the common separation of concerns principle that we all use, but all developers should use, rather, if you can. But I like the fact that C# is used in so many different places. That's why I still love it. But Python is also ubiquitous.
That's a good way to put it. Python is actually very, very common. In Python, you can use Python in so many ways to help handle, say, server structure or implementation or apps that you want to run. Like, it's versatile.
Yeah, absolutely.
So when someone says, it's one of those things where it's just like in C# and other languages. And this is one of those things where I kind of want to remind people, just because someone says they're a developer or they're into programming, it doesn't mean that they speak the same language as everybody else. And just because someone says they work with C# doesn't mean they speak the same language as another C-sharper, because they could be working in vastly different environments with vastly different libraries and like other things that go with it. But that's the same thing with Python.
I can guarantee that Owen and I are from different worlds. If you're an Umbraco developer, and that's exclusively what you do, your world will be very, very different from mine, which is bespoke C# development.
Yeah. So just now I'm probably 90% Umbraco developer, but due to kind of restructuring things, I'm starting to move more towards your traditional C# developer,
enterprise grade development.
Yeah, and it is completely different, and I'm enjoying the challenge. But yeah, we've had to kind of going off on a tangent slightly, but we've had to try and say that there is a difference between an Umbraco developer and a technical developer.
There absolutely is, and that was actually one of my questions on the that I placed in our document, in our show document, asking what is a technical. We're all technical. I mean, I've never heard that title before.
It's just a job title,
right?
Basically, we've got front end developers, technical developers, and then Umbraco developers, which was our original structure. So it's basically back end developer,
right?
What's classed as technical.
So you're now looking at things like CQRS. I'm assuming, again, everybody uses different patterns within their frameworks, dependency injection, inversion of control, that kind of stuff that you'd normally use in an enterprise environment.
It's basically the way that we're trying to go, so that we can pick up projects that are non-Umbraco.
Yeah.
Basically.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, see, this goes back to sort of the whole language thing then. When you start to do a transition in project like this, when you go from, like you're saying, I was Umbraco, now I am something else. And it's the same thing within Chris, like you were saying, you, Chris, have the experience of doing Unity and game development with C# and also enterprise. I'm curious from both of you what you feel the differences actually are.
For what specifically?
For your language, for C#. In this, then, I mean, it's not just Python. We're talking pretty much multiple language, but this time we're looking at one language, different applications. Like, how do you see, like, is there a difference? Is it just once you understand C#, you're fine? And
well, yes, language-wise. So language-wise, C# is C#. It doesn't change. However, Umbraco, and I haven't used Umbraco for many, many years, since one of the first incarnations of it, so again, it's probably changed. Umbraco, I would put in the same kind of category. It's a content management system. So when you create Umbraco, it's like creating a WordPress website. When you deploy an Umbraco application, it's got certain features out of the box. When you want to extend it, it's like WordPress in that you would want to create additional scripts, which I think WordPress you do in PHP, do you? Is that right? Mm-hmm. So if you want to do some real bespoke customization, like creating a WordPress plugin, you do that in PHP. Umbraco is similar in that you would create plugins or additional features in the Umbraco framework. Umbraco. Sorry, I said it wrong about 500 times now. Whereas C# development, and please tell me if I'm wrong here, Owen, C# development or enterprise-grade C# development is very much about taking many different frameworks, many different packages, and putting entirely bespoke system together from scratch using things like MVC, .NET Core, Web API, for example, using dependency injection patterns, using various different NuGet packages like Fluent Validation. I don't know. There's hundreds of thousands of them. There's so many things. But the skill of being an enterprise developer is knowing which tools you need to fill a specific purpose. So you cannot always, you're not always following the same patterns. No job that I've ever done has ever used exactly the same tool sets, unless I've implemented a job, deployed it, and then moved on to another job, and I've had full control over the tool set. So it's very rare that something is similar. DNI, for example, the DNI website, that uses exactly the same frame set as the client that I just finished previous to it because I really liked it. And then I'll learn something new, and next time I implement a website, I'll have another refined tool set that I really like to use. Am I right there, Owain? Is Umbraco quite closed in the way that it works?
Yes and no. Like there are certain ways that you work with the CMS, but if you want to extend the CMS, then you can go right into .NET and just create a package that you want to build that works with the Umbraco CMS.
But you would use their SDK of some description.
Yes and no. Basically, it's kind of weird. I don't do much package development, but I know people that have kind of built entire shops, and they're just hooking it into Umbraco as the CMS, so you can make it very customized.
So it's extensible. So when you say when you've moved from being an Umbraco developer, what did you, if you don't mind saying, what did you do on a daily basis? What were your tasks?
As an Umbraco developer or as a
As an Umbraco developer.
So it's a lot of it's kind of setting up the back office of the CMS and basically pulling any of the content that the editors are putting in and displaying it onto the front end in a way that they're wanting. So like a bit of Razor, and kind of just manipulating the data that the users actually put into the CMS, rather than actually building anything brand spanking new.
Razor is a view engine for anybody listening who heard that and didn't know what it was. It just allows us to display a website in a particular way using a back-end programming language. Right, okay, so that's interesting. So you've moved into this technical team, and this technical team is, what do they do?
It's
just you at the moment. Okay, so what do you do, or what's your intention?
I am the team. There is no me in team. Wait,
we're a really small team. There's basically myself and two other colleagues. One's full-time front end. I'm kind of the back end, kind of doing technical stuff, and then the guy in the middle does a bit of both. So he's a bit of front end, back end, kind of going more full stack. So yeah, I'm kind of doing things like setting up services on servers, running kind of reports, API queries, kind of all that, just running anything that's out with Umbraco.
Yeah, so basically, you're, as I just said, you're doing everything that you need, or anything that you need to do in order to fulfill a particular requirement using whatever tools you have available to you. And there's such a wide, what's the word for it? The infrastructure, not the infrastructure, the
ecosystem.
Ecosystem. That's exactly the word I was looking for. So it's such a big ecosystem, the .NET ecosystem. Like every language, PHP's got a massive ecosystem as well. It's huge, and Python does as well. It's got a whole plethora of libraries.
Yeah.
There are so many things. Now, there is one thing that I think helps when it comes to learning a second language, and I want to throw this out there for those who are actually interested in learning a language at all, and then in the future, hopefully being inspired to get deeper into languages. And I want to make certain we include this. And that is, once you have learned one, there are things you can take with you into another. I remember when I first started getting into programming, I got confused by the difference between functions and methods. I remember when I first started getting into programming, understanding the difference between a library versus like a class, a subclass, superclass, like all kinds of terms and things. If then statements, when's a dual while? How would you actually do a sort? What kind of sort would you do? What's a bubble sort? How does it work? Like I remember the Towers of Hanoi being one of the first applications I had to write. Like things like that, you know.
Yeah.
Having this knowledge helps you because there are going to be things that are mentioned that you can easily associate and go, oh, well, pretty much every language I know of deals with variables in some way, shape, or form. Some are more strict about their variables than others. Some specify that you need to declare that this variable is a double, or this variable is a float, or a string, or something along those lines. Whereas others are like, hey, there's a variable, put whatever you want in it. I'll figure it out when I get to it. I'm looking at you, PHP. But
almost every scripting language, in fact, is like that because they're interpreted.
Yeah, exactly. They come with interpreters which try to make all the difference in the world. But having that kind of information helps. I mean, could you imagine at this current moment in time learning Python and not knowing anything about programming?
Yeah. I think that's partly why I wanted to learn a second language, because from my background of C#, it's been self-taught, so I can get something to work. I mean, and I'll pick up a program that I'm chucked into, and I'll understand it. I can read it and understand what's going to happen. But yeah, there's, as you were saying there's kind of like, what's the difference between a method and what's the difference between a function? And if I try and read a book about C#, I'm like, I actually kind of know this, so you get bored. So it's like, well, if I go reading Python stuff, then there'll be stuff that crosses over, and I'm learning about programming, not just a language, but the actual kind of way,
the methodology.
The methodology of actually programming.
It comes back down to the ability to, as a developer, to be a good developer. It's the ability to analyze and pick up information quickly and assimilate it in such a way that you can make it useful to whatever task you're doing. I mean, it doesn't matter what I'm doing. I will not always turn to C#. It's not always my default language. As much as I love it and I know it as much as I do, it's not always appropriate. I've used JavaScript, C#, UnityScript. Yeah, if anybody listening to this knows what UnityScript is, or doesn't know what UnityScript is, it's basically JavaScript that was written specifically for one of the very first Unity 3D engines that came out, and it's completely obsolete by now, and it's been replaced by C# or Mono with C# on top of it. So I've done that. Did I say PowerShell? I've used PowerShell today, and I've also used Bash script, just because I needed to use all those different things for different tasks. And then I've also used a proprietary scripting language that was written by another developer for a very DSL, a domain-specific language that's written for a very specific use case in an analytic environment, because I needed to do it for something very specific. And I wouldn't ever claim to know, if I had a job and they said, can you pick up Python and run with it, there would be a massive caveat on top of it saying, yes, I can probably pick it up, but I'm going to need some leeway for actually learning it and learning how to do things properly, especially if this is a big enterprise application.
See, that right there, I think, says it all. It's not just learning it and being able to pick it up and run it. It's learning it properly, how to implement things in such a way. I mean, there are so many tutorials out there in today's day and age for anything at all. I mean, yay, bless the internets, but at the same time, it shoots us in the foot, because there are so many people who will say, well, this is the way you want to do it. These are the ways you want to set up this particular class, or you want to extend, or however you want to do things. And it can vary depending upon when it was out, what they learned, and everything else that goes with it. It's like, there's a way to implement security, there's a way to implement tests, and there's a way to build an app or build in a language, regardless of what it is, that will be either harder on the server or the database, depending on how many queries or how you're trying to run all those things that go with it. And there's methodologies that aren't clearly available, because everyone has their own methodology of doing things. So being able to spend that time researching, well, it's recommended that you implement your functions in this methodology. It's recommended that you put them in this order, or you have this particular call set up, or like.
It's called best practice, as we refer to it as patterns and
Well,
practices.
Yes, but I just wanted to
that doesn't-
clarify for people that don't always understand what that means.
And that doesn't always mean that even if you implement something using best practice, using the vendor recommended best practice, Microsoft, for example, for C# publish all the vendor recommended ways to do things. Even if you implement them exactly as they are there, that doesn't mean they're not going to get modified for some other reason. There could be a business reason for you having to cut corners somewhere. I've just been doing a report today, which I've had a bit of a rant to Josie about in private, about a piece of software that has been written by, over the course of 4 years, by 3 distinct teams of people that have taken over, lost all knowledge, taken over again, lost all knowledge, and then I've now come on to have a look at something because they have nobody on site who knows anything about the application. It's complete mess. It is chaos in that code base because there's been no standards and there's been no real investment in the software development lifecycle in that particular company. And unfortunately, we talk about the ideals, but we can't always keep to them. You know, even in our own personal in fact, personal projects are probably the only exception.
Well, I throw out there that one of the things, I mean, when it comes to best practices, there is a way to find out best practices, which is generally speaking, just research, look around and read what people have to say with grains of salt until you figure out why. But also by knowing what the best practices are, it gives you an opportunity to go, oh, I can cut that corner without it being too detrimental to the speed of the app or to the processing or towards the security. Although, please, whatever you do, don't ever skimp on the security. That should be higher priority than the functionality of your apps.
Make you very happy today, Josie. Speaking of RTFM, we're probably at that point, aren't we?
We are indeed at the RTFM point. Oh man. Yeah, so we're at the point of the show called the RTFM, which is where we get a chance to rant, rave about something in our lives just to show you that we are human. And it can be about anything from something that has happened to your dishwasher to a client to a particular function that's driving you crazy. So Chris, you've already started on this, so I have to jump on you.
Okay, so my RTFM today is actually to do with the code base that I've been looking at. Bearing in mind that it is a product of a situation that can't really be helped by all the developers. I'm sure they started off with great intentions and it's got to a point where
Medusa was formed.
Yes, it's an application that has no godly right to be as big as it is. It is so massive. It's not monolithic because monolithic generally means it's one big method or it's one big application that everything is dependency injected. Everything is everything's using various different design patterns, so it's as decoupled as it could be, but it's not been maintained very well. People have been scared to delete things. People have been scared to move things or refactor.
Spaghetti code?
No, more about the structure of the project. So there's like 3,500 scripts in this particular project, or CS files. Each of those aren't individual classes. Some of them are partial classes. Some of them are classes that are files that have multiple classes inside them. Again, this is all best practice stuff. You should really have one class per file. That's the general way we do things in C# and most other object-oriented languages.
Mm-hmm.
But anyway, my RTFM actually surrounds the security aspect. Something that I implemented. I put an API together, and that API has very high security because it's in a sector that needs it specifically, very specifically needs to protect confidential information. So I put a lot of time into securing the part that I was working on, which was an API. I provided the API allocates JWT tokens and allocates claims on those JWT tokens. So it's a JSON web token, which is a common way that we use to communicate with APIs these days, RESTful APIs specifically. And I'm not going to go into all the descriptions of what all these acronyms
You're
mean.
ranting.
But I found today, and this is a new implementation that has been put in there, I found 3 security keys hard-coded into the code base as default values, which could be updated, but they could only be updated via the Unity Unity editor. So that means that old keys, the default keys, are stored for the UAT, production, and test environments in every single binary. So if we build for UAT, we build for a test server and we deploy it to a less secure test environment. If someone decompiles the assemblies, which is very easy to do in Mono and .NET, because they're not obfuscated or anything like that, they can decompile and they can directly read the API keys for production, for UAT, and for test. And these keys are app keys. On top of that, we have JWT tokens that are stored in non-secure manners on the actual client application, so people could easily sniff them. And bearing in mind that I've put a lot of security into the API, so they're only valid for a short amount of time, but that still doesn't mean that people couldn't abuse that particular... Anyway, I've put this into my reports that I'm putting together because it's a very big thing, and it should not have been done. And it might only be a minor thing, and the only reason that it's been implemented that way is for speed. So they could do it quickly and get it out and done. Because the person who wrote it definitely knew he shouldn't have done that. We even had multiple discussions about it. And he was a senior person there. And it is what it is. Rant over.
I might as well just adopt that as my rank, because that just sounds like... No. Go on, Owain. You got one? Come on, Owen.
I'm trying to think now. Do I?
Is there anything that is annoying you or getting to you?
No, because I'm on holiday tomorrow.
Wow.
Yeah, work finished at 5 o'clock and I forgot everything. It's just like, no. To be honest, seriously, it takes a lot to actually get me ranting about something. I try and keep a level head as much as I can.
Oh, that doesn't. That is such a politically correct answer.
I'll rant,
nothing ever gets to me.
I'll rant that I didn't manage to get my run tonight. I'm a keen runner, and I had to work a bit later than planned, and my schedule went out the window because I was trying to finish things up because I'm on holiday tomorrow. So, yeah.
Oh, you want to listen to our indispensable developer podcast we did a while back?
Yes, you totally should.
I'll need to catch up on that. Definitely.
Yes.
I'll listen to it while I'm running.
Yeah.
Yes, you should. In fact, you can find us all over the place, people. Just look for documentation on Include. We're literally all over the place. But anyway, that gets further away. My rant is more or less just on me. I am in the process of doing a massive infrastructure update inside my company, which means I'm shifting servers, I'm moving around load balancers, like I'm getting all kinds of things organized and structured. And it's on me because I have found myself, because I got sick like 2 weeks ago, where I had no voice and I couldn't move, it put me behind schedule in my project. And now I'm finding that I'm not sleeping as much as I should because I'm staying up working. And as we know, and we've learned, this is not a good thing. So my rant is actually at me. It's at me for not planning for having someone be sick, aka me.
I shall retract my 7-minute rant about security and direct my rant at you then, because yes, I've told you many a time you need sleep. I'm in bed. Last night.
I'm sleeping. I'm just sleeping too much because I think I'm still recovering from everything. So my schedule is shifted to such that like I'm spending longer time working because I'm not as mentally adept or quick. And I know when the warning signs start to show up where it's like, what am I doing again? What's this button? Like, you don't want to get to that point. You need to have your breaks, get up, walk away, that kind of a thing. And I'm just kind of mad at myself because this past week, I haven't been able to follow through with that. So this is me literally just ranting at myself to get my shit together. So do it, Josie. Okay, Josie. Great. I'm glad. So yes, we've now reached the end of our show here. Thank you so much to Tultepe and Invina and everybody else who happens to be watching us live as we record our podcast. Thank you so much for joining us. Come visit our website, which is written in C#. Hint, hint, if you wish to get involved, Owen, you totally can. But you can find links to all of our podcasts, past ones. You can find links to our Discord server. Do come in, say hi. We rant, we chat, we discuss like everything. And of course, to our YouTube channel. As a reminder, if you are not following us on YouTube, do so. Just follow us, subscribe to us, and then forget about us. We just really want a customized URL on YouTube, and that requires like 100 subscribers. So just go and subscribe and then forget about us. I see Owen now going.
I actually had some ideas about that, which I'll speak to you after the show, Josie.
Ooh.
No, they're not illegal. Don't worry. They're not going to break any YouTube terms of service or anything like that.
Do they involve bots and scripting?
No, not at all. Not at all. So yes, you can use our website to contact us for any reason, www.DNIStream.live. Please do get involved with the show. Send us questions, comments, any kind of things that we can do to improve the show. If you want to be a guest on the show, please do get involved. Send us your details and Josie will arrange a date for you to come on. It is live though, so just bear that in mind. You need to be available at 7 o'clock on a Thursday. It's been a long week. The code that Josie mentioned, the C# and the Angular code for our website is on github.com/documentation not included. We have got an ever-growing list of bugs and issues that I am some point going to get onto, but I have a guinea pig website that I'm currently trying to get finished. So that's taking priority at the moment before I get onto them. And thank you very much to Owen. Thank you very much for coming on. You've been a wonderful guest. I've learned a little bit about Python. I've had a look at it and actually inspired me a little bit to get involved. And I might do my next scripting task with it, or I'll figure something out. I'll figure something to do Python. I haven't got anything in my mind now, but I will do. Is there anything you want to pimp? Do you want to talk about? Do you want to mention your company, mention Umbracore or anything like that?
Well, I suppose the only thing I would say is that I am going to be documenting my journey through my blog, which is just owen.codes, and so I'll be blogging on there about my journey of learning Python. Just now there's quite a lot of Umbraco stuff on there, but I'm trying to expand. So that's where I'll be pimping all that kind of thing.
Good stuff.
Yes, I also want to mention to everyone who is listening that our show notes this week are going to have a bunch of bits and bobs in them, including links to some of the things that Owen has used for learning Python, including some tutorials that are cool and fun and interesting. And if you are interested in getting involved, be sure to visit our website so you can get those show links. Or if you're listening to us on YouTube, click on the link below. Or if you're like on Apple or Google Pocket, like wherever the hell you find us, just go to DNIStream.live. Just go there. And we all hope to at least see you next week, Thursday, 7 p.m. UK time on twitch.tv/DNI. Keep your eye on Twitter at DNIStream so that we can, give you updates about things. Next week, we're back in the world of freelancing.
Yeah.
We're extending because this is episode 1.1, which might make people go, wait, what? Well, next week's episode is 11.2. So
welcome to the world of software development.
Where development versioning actually declares what series we're doing.
Yeah.
But yes, next week we are going to be talking about the financial side of being a freelancer. And we have someone special showing up as a guest. It's my accountant, who is awesome.
We're going to find out about how much Josie earns and how much money she's willing to give us all for just showing up.
Yeah, tons. So much, it's insane. So much that I'm actually in a proper recording studio, and if you were watching and not just listening, you'd know whether that statement was true or not. You should join us live. I don't know. I'm pimping all the things. Anyway, thank you all so much for showing up. Owen, you're a star, and we will have you back because I'm going to dig into stuff. But yes, we'll speak with you all later next week. Yes.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.